good, you guys? Ras Atiat here in Singapore, and you're back on the Might Owl podcast with me. You guys, thank you so much for joining along, for staying here, for subscribing, for listening. I didn't realize it, but I have a bunch of people actually listening from out in Ireland. I have a bunch of people in Brazil, in Chile. I'm really, really grateful that people are starting to find me. I mean, honestly, I wasn't sure how this would work, and I wasn't looking for a big audience anyway, but I wanted to put my thoughts down. Usually, you put them down on paper. That's what journaling is really, really great for. But it got to a point where I could think faster than my hand could write, and so I figured, why not, right? A podcast is a great platform, and it gives me a chance to kind of process some of my feelings without actually processing them on somebody, and I get to speak out loud and listen to, my thoughts later on. It's a way of me documenting the process of becoming a better version of myself while I build a business, while I'm a single mom, while I run a household, all of those things. So little by little, I'm slowly coming up and talking about the little things that occur to me on a daily basis based on things I've seen on social media, on in movies, in conversations with clients, whatever. Things that I think we need to maybe lend a voice to. And as always, I'm hoping that it does help people, but I do know that it is helping me, so I will continue. The one thing I want to talk about, though, is the fact that I really wish that the idea of followers was more about following because you like the content rather than I'm going to follow you so you can follow me back. So as you all know, as I go through and post my podcast, it gets distributed on its own through Libsyn. I use Liberated Syndication as my platform to kind of distribute the podcast, right? So it puts it on the Libsyn platform, it puts it on Google, puts it on iTunes, puts it on Spotify, and it also puts it on my YouTube channel. And what I've been getting lately is, and I don't even know if it's a bot or not, but what I've been getting lately is the fact that people will share my work or not share my work, but comment on my work. And it's mostly like, I followed you, now can you follow me? And it's quite sad because it's very telling of the times at the moment. They just worried about the followers. They're not worried about the content. They're not worried about, do you like what I have to say or not? And it's something that I've been noticing a lot. Lately in Singapore, we've been working on the Vasanta Mudal Parve, which means it's a pilot episode from 5 different production houses being voted on to see which one will be chosen to become a full-fledged long-form series. So that means from one pilot, depending on how well you can tell your story and give, a teaser about what's to come, how well the audience sits with that material, and then deciding on whether that should become 52 episodes or not. So it's really, really interesting. But what I've noticed is it's been going on since May 8th. It's been going on since May 8th. We're coming up on the tail end of this now. We have until June 12th to finish voting. And it seems like not many people are commenting. Not many people are hitting the like button. People have seen it. You get the views or whatever, but you're not getting the real content liked and shared and commented on, which is the more important part of that whole statistic. I think that's what you call it, statistic, right? So I think it's very, very sad, though, because a lot of people end up using bots. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to build the community. They don't actually want to get to know what their audience is thinking or feeling and then create a content based on that. What they would rather do, though, is just pay for a subscription to get someone else to do the work, and it doesn't seem like it's very, very heartfelt, or it's not really connected. That's not the human connection aspect of social media. So social media is a very, very powerful platform. There's so much you could do with it if you actually put in the time to work it. Right? It could be to your advantage. I have created a global network mostly because I actually interact with everybody. Wasn't so great at Twitter. I think I started on Twitter I think it was like February of this year, maybe. I decided, I'm on there. I've been on there since 2013. I haven't done much of anything with it. So I figured, why not join the conversation and see what's going on? And at first I was like, oh my God, this is so annoying, and I don't like the content that's being created on there. But eventually I found a way to create my own community and bring people together and talk about the things that really do matter, as well as promote other people. So as always, I think I've always been a community builder, though. I like leaving feedback. I like connecting with people, but in the same token, I can't expect for people to be like me. People are going to use bots no matter what you do. People are going to put nice or beautiful or thanks on all of their content as comments on other people's posts and stuff, but that doesn't mean it's very heartfelt. I'm looking for people who are going to take 5-10 minutes, to actually thinking about the content that you've taken the time to create, and then put in something that shows me that you actually read the content. Same thing with Instagram stories. I've been trying really hard to get people to interact, and I find that some people will answer the actual question at hand, and other people will take the time to ping you and say, hey, follow me. or if you want, more subscribers, DM me, or I think you're pretty, and it has nothing to do with the question at hand, and they're trying to connect. So I think it's really, really interesting to notice the way that social media is being used, and I wanted to lend my voice to it, mostly because I want to say that I think it's really important that you continue to create regardless of what goes on. I get frustrated sometimes, and I get dejected a little bit, and I kind of wonder if I should continue posting sometimes, because I do look at the numbers, right? They tell us to look at the numbers. But more than that, I'm also hoping that the content actually resonates. I find that video obviously tracks way better than some of my other posts, but I also know that I need to be able to provide something for all different types of learners. If I don't provide something audio, if I don't provide something video, if I don't provide something visual where you have to like read it, that means I'm missing people, and I don't want to miss people. But in the meantime, I am trying really hard to continue creating regardless of what the response is. Mostly because I think I have a strong message. I think I have something vital to pass on, and another perspective that I can actually help other people gain some knowledge and insight with. And I think that it's really important that I continue doing what I'm doing. And it's because I have a belief in me that I'm going to continue creating regardless of the fact. I think, though, in the same token, people get very worried about what the numbers mean, and they get caught up with how many people and what the conversion rate is, and how many people are following versus how many people are commenting versus how many people are liking or sharing your product. I think it's really, really important to keep in mind that you should still continue to produce, you should still continue to create, because without the product in the first place, then what are people going to be talking about? What are people going to be sharing in the first place? I think it's really easy to make fun of things, so that's why memes are so popular. You get to make fun of things, everybody laughs a little bit, but you're not necessarily talking about how to change the situation itself. So many memes about, Black Lives Matter. I know that people want to come forward and say something about the abuse that they've suffered, or the tough time they had in high school, or maybe even right now, because they suddenly feel like they need to add something to the Black Lives Matter cause. And they're so worried about what's going to happen, the backlash, like, will people tear me apart? Because let's face it, it's easier to tear something apart than it is to build right next to it. And I would rather see people teach rather than criticize, but I can't change everything until I show them what the difference could be. So I'm trying really hard to keep my my level-headedness in this particular climate, because there's just been so much content that has come forward. So many people, whether they know it or not, are definitely showing us who they really are in real life, because this is a huge matter, right? Black Lives Matter is something that has been going on for generations now. Unfortunately, it should have been handled way back when. I mean, I remember how big a deal the Rodney King beating was, and people would talk about that forever on end. And for a while, it kind of died down. And I don't know if it's because people stopped commenting when they saw something going wrong or what, but suddenly with the influx of cell phones and really good picture quality and zoom capabilities on a phone, everybody and their mother has been taking videos, and it's a good thing. I'm saying it's a good thing because suddenly you see what the climate really is like. I think I saw a video the other day of a man who was he was being a responsible citizen. He was cleaning up and picking up trash in and around his apartment complex, and he was a student. He was very deliberate and very clear about how he answered the police officer that happened to have him on camera, and was demanding that he sit down and stop what he was doing, because he felt that this man was dangerous. Now, I also heard what the police officer said when he called for backup, saying that there was a suspect that was refusing to comply, and that he was wielding a blunt object. And I was thinking, yo, seriously, this is crazy. He was being asked to prove that he lived in the place that he lived, and that was also dangerous. I could see the fear in the man's eyes, saying, look, I'm not going to give you anything with my address on it, because I don't want you to hunt me down later. I don't want you to say that you know where I live. Like, that's dangerous, privacy of information and all that. And the fact that he was kind enough to show that he was a student, and he wasn't actually threatening the officer, but he did not want to sit down because he didn't want to see what happened next. He did not want to be in a position where he could be abused further. And I felt for him, and I understood that. But it's things like this that need to be showcased so that people can understand that it's not a false accusation when we say that some people really do abuse their authority. And it's not a false accusation to say that, contrary to popular belief, and it's completely opposite of what the stereotype of a Black man is, that there are some responsible guys out there making sure that they keep their own neighborhood safe, that they take pride in their apartment complex. I mean, I don't think I've seen very many people actually picking up trash. And yeah, he had a picker upper thingy, a doohickey or whatever, that he didn't have to touch it with his hands, but he could pick it up and put it in a trash bag. But he was literally doing that. How is that menacing in any way? He was minding his own business. This person came up and started asking a bunch of questions, and obviously he was in uniform. He had a body cam on him, but I fail to see how this is appropriate behavior for a police officer. This is more harass and intimidate than it is to protect and serve. And it's very, very sad. Now, I'm also saying that this is one example of a police officer. And unfortunately, there are many such examples, but there are also examples of people who are doing the right thing. I've seen police officers who joined the what's the dance called? Something shuffle. I don't know. It's a shuffle. It's a dance. But he joined a rally with a bunch of peaceful protesters who happened to be dancing in the street, and he joined in the dance as well. And I appreciate that. But then on the same token, I saw a video of, men who were knelt down while in uniform to support the protesters. And the next frame, they were no longer kneeling and they were attacking. So I don't know what to believe, but I am very, very upset by the things I see. And I know that there are plenty of people who want to get up and say something about it, but they're very worried about what the backlash could be. But I don't want you to focus on how many people are going to tear you up. I don't want you to focus on how many people are going to follow you all of a sudden or not follow you. I know one of my favorite brands, Kulapari, actually stood up and said something about Black Lives Matter. And she mentioned the fact that people have stopped following her because she took a political stance. And I'm actually really proud because she pointed out not only the fact that we as people need to come together. We do have racism against Black people in our own community, in the Indian community. And I also know that she is a big influencer. And for her to say, you know what, I took a stand regardless of the fact that I was going to lose followers because I know this is important. I know I need to stand up. I need to lend my support because I have the ability to garner attention. And the more people that I can get to worry about the cause, to be concerned about the cause, to do something about the cause, the better. These are the things I want to see more of. And that's not to say that you can only be an influencer and then say these things. I want regular people to stand up and say something as well. And yes, I understand it is very scary. You have no idea who's going to troll you and who's going to say stuff. I mean, I've interviewed people who most people don't like, right? And then all of a sudden the trolls come out the woodwork and they want to attack my character just because I had him tell his story. Like, I've had that happen several times, but that's not going to stop what I'm doing because I think a story is still a story. How he got to his fame is still important. Now, he's going to be very subjective about how he came to where he is, and other people will have their own, ideas of what he's done, but I want you to hear his side of the story too. And that's the point of all of the interviews that I've ever done in my life. I also think it's really important that you not be afraid. Yeah, the first time you stand up and say something, it's probably not going to be perfect. Chances are someone's going to say something. Chances are you use the wrong word or the wrong hashtag, or your tone came out wrong, or maybe you kind of ended up on another tangent by accident and that wasn't your intention. Rather than take your post down, I would love for you to explain where you're coming from. I would love for you to show people that, you know what, I'm going to stand up anyway. Yes, I made a mistake. Yes, I did not use it appropriately. Yes, I jumped the gun and said something before I had all the facts. That's okay, you guys. I would rather see you apologize for something you made a mistake on rather than you take the whole piece down and then allow people to silence you once again. All of our voices are important in this matter. All of our voices are important because the louder we get together, the more sustainable the change could be. It's not enough for a couple of people to shout, for a week straight or whatever, or black out their feed for a week straight, and then all of a sudden you go back to normal, the way things were before, and, the trend's gone. Now what? What do we do next? Is it the Kardashians again? What do we do? I don't want it to be like that. The louder we get, the longer this stays. And hopefully it stays long enough for the change to actually be implemented. Right now, people are noticing the difference between a good cop and a bad cop. Not necessarily white or black, but the good cop and the bad cop, right? It's not something that we can turn a blind eye to anymore. It's something that we have to notice, and we need to be able to stand up together for solidarity's sake, for safety's sake, in the event that you do come across a bad cop. There's more of us than there are of them. I'm not saying this to scare all the police officers for them to fear for their lives. It's more like, you know what? You can't bully us just because you have a gun and a badge. You can't bully us just because you're in a position of authority. Yes, you chose a position of authority, and I'm hoping you chose it for all the right reasons, but let's face it, it's easy to become a cop, and easier to become a cop than it is to become a doctor or a nurse. It's easier to become a cop than it is to become a paramedic. There's not as much involved. But that also means that the standard for a cop is not as helpful as it could be. You do not screen for mental health issues. You do not screen for the reason for why they want to become a cop. And I'm saying, yeah, people could say all the right things and do all the right things, and you never know what they are actually on the inside. But at least if you could make it a little bit more difficult to become a cop, then we could feel a little more safe with people on the streets patrolling. And it's not to patrol where you live or why you're in this particular neighborhood. Why is this color in this neighborhood? That's unfair. That means that, you're looking at a specific socioeconomic level on top of the fact that he is a person of color. So whether you're just now for the first time opening your mouths, whether it's something you've been talking about forever and you're finally glad that people are catching on, I don't want you to get offended when people join in. I don't want you to get offended when people miss the point. I don't want you to get offended when people go off on a tangent and take it somewhere completely different from where it was intended. Whether it becomes Black Lives Matter turned Brown Lives Matter, I don't want you to get offended. Rather than criticizing people, I would much rather see you help them understand what they could adjust so that it could be a more concise argument. There is a way to teach without criticism. I've seen it in my own life. When I yell at my daughter and say, "Oh my gosh, how could you make this mistake?" And I'm not using mean words or anything. "How could you make this mistake?" She immediately feels useless. She immediately feels like she's not good enough. But if I were to tell her, "Hey, you know what? You made a mistake here, but I've seen you do this without making the mistake before. What was your thought pattern? What happened? Where did you go wrong?" And mostly it's math, because the logic doesn't make sense to her. Her logic makes sense. So I need to understand where the disconnect is. But in order for me to get through to her where she's open-minded enough for her to listen to me and take on new information, I have to approach it with love. I love you for trying this math problem. No, you didn't get it right, but I need to figure out where you went wrong so I can help you understand better. So if you see somebody who's not doing the best that they possibly could, understand that it took a bit of courage to actually come out and say something in the first place. And if they got it wrong, great. Okay, they got it wrong. You don't have to embarrass everybody in order to get the point across. You don't have to make them into a meme. You don't have to, point out the fact that they're completely stupid and they're completely racist and how can they be just so small-minded. You don't have to do any of those things. You could privately ask them, "Hey, do you realize this is how the rest of the world is going to see this? Do you realize that maybe this was not your intention, but this is what it sounds like, that you're not actually worried about the cause itself, the movement itself, the protest itself?" So I know I began in one place, and I know it's been very, very muddled as far as all the social media that's going on. I know people are posting because they want to be part of this influx of followers all of a sudden because people are following the hashtag Black Lives Matter. And people are following the they're also following Thin Blue Line. They're also following Blackout Tuesday. They're following a lot of things all of a sudden. It is the thing to do, to follow a trend, to follow a hashtag. But in the midst of all of that, don't forget that there is an actual cause to promote. There is an actual injustice in the world that we have a chance to correct once and for all. And yes, it affects all of us because racism isn't just one race. It's all races. It's all lives. Yes, I keep saying all lives matter. I'm not saying it to diminish anything. I'm saying it because once we get Black lives sorted, it's going to trickle down into all the other races. Why? Because the Crusades began with one religion. The Crusades the World War II began with one specific type of race, right? All these things began in one place, and then somehow it kind of trickled into all the other races as well. The British colonized most of the world. And you see a lot of their influence all over the world. I remember when the movie Indian came out, and suddenly people were pointing out some of the sympathizers, the white sympathizers, the British sympathizers, versus the people who were really standing up for their right to wear their own clothes the way they wanted to learn when they had a chance, to speak up if they were women, all of those things. And yes, it trickles down into all the other cultures. All lives matter. Eventually, I want for all lives to be at peace, for them to have the right to say what they need to say without hurting or criticizing or putting anyone else down, because it's that important. But in order for that to happen, right now we need to take care of the biggest fire, which is Black Lives Matter. Once we take care of that, it allows us, it gives us permission, it gives us insight into how we can tackle our own problems as well. So please, If you're going to follow them because you want to follow them, not because you want them to follow you back. If you're going to comment on people's posts, please comment as if you've read the damn content. Make a difference. Don't just be there to be there. Make a difference. Show them that you read the content. Show them that you actually care. If you don't understand what they're saying, you don't like what they're saying, please say that as well. But if you like what they're saying, write down what you like. Write down what you understand. Write down what made you feel better about the whole situation. What did you learn? Any of those things. It's not enough to get up and write a 10-page review when you're pissed off about something. When you're happy, when you're glad, when you like someone's content, you should be saying stuff about that too. It should be even. There should be equal rights for that too. But what do? We take the easy way out. When we want to be heard, we make sure damn well we're heard. And when it's good content, I'm just going to like it and keep on going, it also means that you're reducing the amount of traction that particular post could get, because guess what? It could be life-saving information in there. I'm guilty of it too, but I'm trying really hard to write as much as I can. I remember when Gary Vee came up with that $1.80 marketing strategy that he came up with, which means 2 cents on 90 posts daily. Guess what? Instagram would stop me from going past a certain number of posts because they thought that I was harassing people. It wasn't. What I had figured out was I could actually get on my laptop, type faster, right? By searching hashtags and seeing content that I actually liked. So I would be able to knock out 15, 20, 30 comments in less than an hour, and it would come across looking like a bot because I seemed to be harassing people or I was contacting too many people. Why? Because the minute Gary Vee said, go contact and build your community, everybody started doing it, and so it created an influx. It's the same thing with the live videos. COVID hits and everybody's starting to use live video, and now guess what? It doesn't stay in your feed for 24 hours, it goes straight to IGTV, which also means that you can't tell who went live. You just have to keep looking at the feed and hope that they actually posted it in the feed rather than just on their IGTV channel. So a lot is changing, you guys. The climate is changing, the landscape is changing, but the fact remains, if we're going to engage with each other, we need to be intentional about the engagement. If we're going to speak up finally, we need to make sure that we allow other people to speak and give them the encouragement that they need to continue speaking. If they're wrong in any way, please treat it with love and try and educate them rather than criticize and condemn them so that they shut up and keep quiet once again. Because that wasn't the point of this at all. If you feel something about this movement, if you feel like, this is wrong and you're upset by the things that you see, when you get up and speak, I want you to tell them what upsets you. I want you to identify the things that upset you and why they upset you. What does it really mean? And what would you rather see instead? That's enough, actually. You don't have to know anything about Black history. You could just say, hey, I saw this video and it upset me because. And I think it's wrong for people to treat each other that way because. And ideally, I would rather people treat each other this way instead. That's perfect. That's enough. That's enough to lend the voice. Because if enough people shout and say, this is injustice, that is also part of the Black Lives Matter movement. You don't have to quote everybody's names. You don't have to know the history. You don't have to know when slavery started, when it ended. You don't need to know, what it was that Abraham Lincoln did for the slaves in the first place. You don't have to know why JFK was assassinated or why Lincoln was assassinated. You don't need to know how each of the people who were victims of police brutality were killed. You don't need to know who was wearing a hoodie and who was jogging, who was, at the store, who was sitting inside their apartment. It doesn't matter. You need to be able to speak up and say, this is wrong because, and I don't like it, it hurts my feelings, and I would rather see this instead. That's actually plenty. So with that, I'm going to end my rant. If you have any questions or concerns, please drop them in the comments below. I do want to hear from you. I want to hear from you if you have something to say. I appreciate the follows. I appreciate the subscriptions, but if you're just subscribing for me to subscribe back to you, you're defeating the purpose. I would rather hear from you if you had something to say. So please, by all means, drop me a comment in the feed below. If you have a personal question, if you want to contact me directly, please use the DM function and let me know what you need, and I'll see if I can help. But in the meantime, you guys, please consider what I'm telling you. Please consider the point of this whole podcast. It is to document the things that I'm seeing. It is to document the feelings that I'm feeling, the ideas that I suddenly understand better. And I'm trying to share it with the world as quickly as possible because I think it's important and it's timely. But at the same token, I am not forcing you to believe what I believe. I am simply lending a different perspective. And I hope you can respect that. So for all of you out there, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for commenting and liking. And If you have a chance and it's important to you, you think it's an important message that might help somebody else, please by all means share it and tag me, okay? Because I would like to support as many people as possible. All right, you guys, I'll catch you again soon. Bye.